And which justices will you be listening for most closely?
I love a few of them. I don't like some others. And you say what you want, but you have the ones that were appointed by Barack Hussein Obama and Biden. I don't care how good your case is. You can have the greatest case ever. They're going to rule against you. They always do. And it's not supposed to be that way. Now, the Republicans tend to be very different. They want to show how honorable they are. So a man can appoint them and they can rule against him. It's so proud of it. We're so proud we ruled against Trump. We're so proud. We're above it. There are those that say that's wonderful, and there are those that say they're so stupid.
They're so stupid when they rule against me, but so wonderful when they don't. President Trump yesterday in the Oval Office after announcing he will attend the oral arguments this morning at the Supreme Court for his executive order challenging birthright citizenship. Joining us now, former U.S. Attorney, former senior FBI official Chuck Rosenberg. Also with us, Norm Eisen. He's the executive chair of the Democracy Defenders Fund, and from 2019 to 2020 served as special counsel to the House Judiciary Committee for the impeachment trial of President Trump. He's also co-founder of the Contrarian on Substack. Gentlemen, good morning. So glad to have you both here. Chuck, I'll start with you. You'll be outside the chamber, I know, this morning covering this for us. Just if you can set the stage a little bit for people who are just kind of tuning in to what the stakes are in this case.
The stakes are high. Let me back up a little bit, if I may, Willie, and give you some history. I know it's early for history, but here we go. Yeah, so in 1857, the Supreme Court decided what turned out to be one of its most repulsive decisions, Dred Scott. Dred Scott stood for the proposition that black people never were and never could be citizens of the United States. A truly repulsive decision. In 1868, we enacted the 14th Amendment, primarily to address the Dred Scott decision, primarily to make sure that black people could be and always would be citizens if born in the United States. What's at issue now, what will be argued later this morning in the Supreme Court, Clause 1 of the 14th Amendment, the so-called birthright citizenship clause. The question is whether or not somebody who is born or naturalized in the U.S., and this is the key phrase, and subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, is in fact a United States citizen. There's old Supreme Court law on that question. It will be tested today. And the question going forward, of course, is whether somebody born in this country, perhaps to an undocumented parent, will continue to enjoy the privileges of citizenship. So big question, big day, big argument in the Supreme Court, Willie.
So, Norm, your organization, Democracy Defenders, co-counsel to the ACLU in this case, challenging Donald Trump's use of the executive order here and defending the 14th Amendment. This is not the first time that a case like this around birthright citizenship has been argued before the Supreme Court. What is the case you all will be making today?
We'll make the case that since the founding of the United States, it's been understood that the children of migrants born here are citizens. That's an ancient tradition in Anglo-American law. It was reaffirmed in the 14th Amendment. There's no real serious question about that. And that was confirmed, Willie, in 1898 in the Wong Kim Ark case. So this has been good Supreme Court law for over a century. Congress has passed a statute reaffirming this. And until the farcical, intellectual gyrations of Donald Trump, where he doesn't follow the law, he thinks the law should follow him, nobody seriously questioned that the children of migrants born in this country were citizens of the country. Donald Trump doesn't get to choose which babies born here are citizens. The Constitution and the 14th Amendment make that choice. I'll be in court with the legal team today, and I'm looking forward to Donald Trump hearing directly from a majority of the justices on the Supreme Court bench that these arguments he's making, like so many of his other attacks on the rule of law, fly in the face of the Constitution and our laws.
Chuck, one of the points that the president likes to raise is that this is an anomaly in the United States. Most other countries, most Western democracies do not have birthright citizenship. I don't think that makes any difference in terms of what the Supreme Court justices are going to feel about this case or think about this case. Would you expect there to be a 9-0 ruling on this? Because critics of the president say this is such a clear breach of the Constitution that anything short of a 9-0 ruling would be something almost of a loss for liberal principles.
So two responses, Katie. First, roughly 30, maybe 32, 33 countries have a analogous birthright citizenship clause in their law, their constitution, primarily in the Western Hemisphere, so North, South, and Central America. But you're quite right. Many other democracies do not. But that's not determinative. And I know you understand that. I mean, our laws, our Constitution will inform the judgment of the court today. Do I expect it to be 9-0? I don't. When the Wong Kim Ark case was decided in 1898, the one that Norm had referred to, that was a 6-2 decision with one judge, one justice abstaining. There's always been some contest around the words, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and what does it mean? Unanimity would be nice. I don't fully expect it, but I think Norm is right. We have a common understanding of what the 14th Amendment is and does. We do have a Supreme Court case that is almost entirely on point, and we have Congress in 1952 enacting a statute that echoed the words of the 14th Amendment and guaranteeing this right of citizenship. Will it be unanimous, though, Katie? Not so many things are these days.
All right. So there were a slew of rulings against the president yesterday in federal courts. A judge ordered an immediate halt to the construction of President Trump's 90,000 square foot White House ballroom. The judge ruling that the president lacks the authority to fund the $400 million project through private donations, adding that Trump has no statutory power for a project of this scale without congressional approval.
Let's take these one at a time really quickly. And just, Chuck, it's a sort of thing where Donald Trump decides one day to tear down the East Wing of the White House, and Americans go, can a president just tear up the White House and rebuild it by himself? And, of course, the answer is clearly no, but we do have a legal process. It took a while for the courts to do this. But talk about this and how it's an example, again, of, as I say, Donald Trump pushing out at the boundaries of his Article 2 powers, and the courts now, it seems, have finally caught up to all of that. There was a Project 2025. There wasn't a Project 2026 because the courts seem to be running Project 2026, which is a constitutional correction, an illegal correction of all the abuses that occurred in 2025.
Yeah, Joe, so there has been over time, last half century, if I may, an accretion of power in the executive. At the same time, we see Congress ceding its power over and over and over again, Congress failing to act as a check on the president, whether it's in terms of funding, whether it's in terms of war-making authority, right? Congress has ceded the field to the president. So if you want to check a president, I'm not just talking about Mr. Trump here, but if you want to check a president, the place you go is to court, right? It was interesting to me, for instance, that President Trump simply ordered that TSA workers be paid. I'm all for paying TSA workers, but normally, as you know, as a former member of Congress, that's done in a different way. And so to the extent that Congress is not doing anything, and I mean that strictly in a bipartisan way, it's not surprising to me that presidents, and Mr. Trump is a great example of this, continue to do more and more through executive order and on their own signature and on their own word.